It's been 6 long years since Pascoe Vale last visited Lakeside Stadium in their last stint in the Victorian top flight. A couple of years ago, they were almost a kick of a ball away from promotion back to the top tier in Victorian football. Since then, there have been some lean years, relegation to VPL 2, and now rooted to the rock bottom of the table in the 3rd division. And the visiting Pascoe Vale here in round 6 of the Australia Cup have chosen to rest all 11 starters from their weekend's defeat to Brunswick Juventus. In the starting lineup tonight, 4 players who were on the bench that night: Jacob Wiseman, Connor Cometti, Joshua Cataruccio and Adam Daoud. And coming in, the youngsters, the young brigade: Lewis Cool, Hani Ateish, Josh Caruana, Kalen Geenan, Mateus Mullins, Tyson Sacco and Luca Sesto. South Melbourne, meanwhile, have prided themselves on their performances in this competition, and that doesn't change. Despite their relegation battle, spirits have been buoyed by their victory over the Melbourne Knights in last week's relegation 6-pointer in the original Melbourne derby. But 5 of those players who started at Summer Street retained their places tonight, and an eye-catching return to the side for George Mells. Coming in from the bench, Jonathan Pethulis between the sticks, Zach Spiteri, Cooper Halfpenny, Charlie Leach and Campbell Dobison. And retaining their places, Morgan Evans, Marco Yankovic, Luca Durso, Lucas Inglese and Noel Bernarda. Javi Lopez drops to the bench alongside Jordan Lampard, Rob Harding and Sam Franku. Cooper Head still on the bench after that game in the league. And in comes Ethan O'Sullivan from the under-23s. South Melbourne are in their traditional all-blue kit, kicking from right to left this evening. Pascoe Vale, the visitors, in all white. My name is Josh Parrish, and I'm delighted to have the company of Oscar Rutherford this evening. Oscar, an almost unrecognisable team sheet from Pascoe Vale. It would be some feat if they can pull off a cup set against a team 2 divisions higher tonight.
Well, I think that was the case before we saw any team news, before we had any indication of how either of these teams were going to approach the game, Josh. And like you say, it's going to be one of the most impressive feats in Victorian football history. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say if Paco are able to get something out of this game, a game which, at least in theory, should pose a lot of interest and importance to both of these teams. As you mentioned in your introduction, 2 teams really struggling in their respective league campaigns is maybe an understatement, particularly in Paco's case. But a big opportunity for South, as you say, coming off the back of that win, to restore a bit of a good feeling around the club. So you feel like they'll take this game pretty seriously and want to win it.
This is Noel Bernarda on the ball, trying to check inside into the near post and away from danger. I think, as goes the coaching cliche, it will really come down tonight to who wants it more. Is this cup competition a needless distraction from their relegation struggles for both sides, or is it a welcome respite from their poor league form? Certainly South's team selection suggests that they still value a deep run in this competition for what it does for the club's brand and, of course, the bank balance. We all know how important those big nights against A-League oppositions can be when you can pack 3,000 or 4,000 here into Lakeside Stadium. Tonight, it's almost eerily silent here. Of course, all the focus of the supporters will be on the league. And that 2-0 win over the Melbourne Knights has certainly turned around expectations, and it's a real sense of optimism following that Jack Pope double on the weekend. He's not involved tonight. Of course, red carded after 37 minutes. What better way to endear yourself to the South supporters than with 2 stunning goals and a red card against the old enemy, especially in a win.
I think, as you say, Josh, South can't afford not to take this competition and this game seriously. It is really their remaining hope of success this season, and well, I think it's probably fair to say in the South Melbourne context and Australian football context, we've seen what a good cup run can do to rescue a season. So South, I think, really have to invest enough in this competition. They've maybe been done a favour by the way that Paco have approached this game, with their focus very much on their league position and trying to improve their standing.
Long ball in the direction of Noel Bernarda. He's been well picked out into the penalty spot and then over the crossbar. A lot of pressure on that shot. Came in from Charlie Leach. And he's been left limping. I guess the other underrated factor is that these young Pascoe Vale players, and they do have a strong junior NPL program at Paco, they always have, But some of these youngsters might fancy themselves a shout for first-team selection if they can impress tonight, especially under new management. Following the departure of Shane Rajepi on the dugout, he's taken up an assistant coaching role over at Green Gully. Now new faces on the touchline for Pascoe Vale, so a fresh set of eyes, a clean slate for these youngsters to try and stake their claim for a first-team spot.
And I think absolutely when the expectations are so low, when you're so, at least on paper, outmatched as Pascoe are coming into tonight's game, as you rightly point out, Josh, it's a massive opportunity for a bunch of unproven and largely unheralded youngsters to make a mark, and there are a few bigger stages in Victorian football than Lakeside to really impress. And we've seen these first few minutes, they're certainly not wilting under the pressure. They've giving a solid account of themselves to open up the game.
Just looking at this Pascoe Vale lineup. Looks almost like 5 at the back to me at times. I mean, it's just a reflection of how they've had to defend early in this game, but looking like a back 3 with wing backs. Josh Caruana offering the width on the right-hand side. Adam Daoud offering a focal point up front, the number 99. Guess if the number 9 shirt's not free, what's better than 2 of them?
And I mean, as much as South come into this game, of course, off the back of a desperately needed win to end a fairly historic poor run of form that South have been on, it's important not to forget that, of course, they got those couple of goals in the first half, and that allowed them to sit back and do what South have been able to do for a long, long time. Breaking down opposition is something that remains a massive thorn in the side of South Melbourne, and of course they're playing lower league opposition tonight and they should be able to get the job done, but it's not something that they've been consistently showing South, even having picked up that win over the weekend. So I think that will give Pascoe a little bit of hope. I mean, 1 goal in the 6 games prior to that. If you look back further, 3 goals in the 11 games that South played in NPL football up until that point. So there is at least some small reasons for optimism from Pascoe tonight, and that they'll at least lay the challenge before South Melbourne and force them to do something they haven't been able to do very often this season.
This is an unfamiliar sight to people who've watched South Melbourne over the past 5 or 6 years. Goalkeeper taking it short. It's a new broom with Sinisha Kohadzic in charge. Interesting to see how they use Lucas Inglesi going forward. He's deployed as a makeshift second striker against the Knights. He did a very, very creditable job out of position, a guy who we've mainly seen play holding midfield and in central defence.
He's proven himself to be quite the utility, and I don't think any of us will be surprised if we get at all deep in this game and South are struggling to find a way through. If we see him thrown up top again as another route to goal.
Well, he's back in more familiar surrounds at central defence today, but who knows, as you say, Oscar, if South need a goal, could be an unlikely route to it. However, they are a little thin back there. No Jake Marshall still. Their progression in the Cup last time out came at something of a cost, with Marshall and Andy Brennan both going down in that extra time win over the Bentley Greens. Well taken down by Marko Jankovic. Evans spreads the play, and now South with some progress down the right. Lucas Sesto has no choice but to turn it behind for a South Melbourne corner, which will be taken by Zach Spiteri, it looks like. No one on the halfway line for South Melbourne at the moment. I'm sure that will change. Marko Jankovic having to back off in a hurry. Now he's got the clearance to head into the box. Pascoe can't quite get it clear. It's sent back into the mixer by George Mells. As far as the retreating Jankovic, and he'll take the safe option and put it into touch.
Well, it's a bit of a mess of a corner routine there, Josh. As you pointed out, Marko Jankovic not able to commit into the box because no one had dropped back and was there to play the sweeping role. So by the time the ball was sent in, Jankovic was really just on the edge of the penalty area and wasn't able to be the attacking threat that he often is in those set pieces.
And we've seen trick free kick routines where players are running in at the same time and then mock arguing over who was meant to take it and then taking it quickly and short. I don't think it was one of those. I'm not going to give them that much credit. Mells. Dovison. In low into the 6-yard box, and it's easily dealt with by Jacob Wiseman, former Melbourne Knights backup, I should say. Understudy to Chris Oldfield in his time there. He was out for the season after requiring, I believe, shoulder surgery, so that was a big loss for the Melbourne Knights. Have to turn to Gabriel Matty. If he'd stuck around at the Knights, he might well be the first choice keeper at the moment. Caruana's throw. It's given away by Connor Cometti. Now here comes Mells. Bernarda finding Durso. Back to Bernarda. Lining up his sights from a long way out, and it takes a heavy deflection safely into the arms of Jacob Wiseman. Noel Bernarda looks like the man who might make things happen for South Melbourne tonight. Probably could have told you that by looking at a team sheet, but he's looking in better nick than he has done in recent weeks. Brought him back in a hurry from injury in the Port Melbourne game. Didn't look right. Maybe just getting back up to match fitness and top speed.
And look, Josh, we're only 11 minutes in, but I think if you're Pascoe Vale, you're the coaching staff, you're very happy with how the game started. They've by no means been under a mountain of early pressure. They've kept South at bay for large parts of the opening minutes and even ventured into their own final third on a couple of occasions, even if that threat hasn't really materialised up to yet.
Spiteri. Mells. Well defended, out for another South Melbourne corner. It was Caelan Geenan who stood his ground. South a little bit more organised this time around. Of course, when you make a lot of changes to the team, sometimes set-piece responsibilities become a little bit muddled. They've got their routine down pat this time. Let's see what it produces. Spiteri's delivery. Jankovic was free. Couldn't direct it goalwards. And then the eventual shot, a tame one towards the Pascoe Vale custodian. Looks to restart play as quickly as possible. Barney Ateish did his best but couldn't keep it in on the far side.
I'll tell you what, it's a good looking counter-attack as well. Tyson Zacko making that run through the middle. Had Ateish been able to trap the ball, quickly release through the middle. There was a real look of danger, so not totally comfortable just yet for South Melbourne.
Caruana. Ateish has popped up on the right this time. Zach Spiteri cleverly plays it off him and wins a goal kick.
We speak about the opportunity for the Pascoe youngsters to make their stake under a new coach. It's not a dissimilar situation for South Melbourne as well. We know that Sinisha's made good use of a number of the younger players in the time that he's been in the senior head coach role the last few weeks, and yeah, some good looks at some younger players, the likes of Spiteri, of course, to really demonstrate what they can do at this level as well.
Jankovic. Daoud. Played the pass blind on the turn and it's picked off by Inglese. Durso keeps it alive. Back to Halfpenny, who's dropping between the centre-backs in possession. Making up a 3 when South Melbourne have the ball. Trying to connect with Mells was Jankovic. Telegraphed, and it's picked off by the visitors. Caruana's challenge, now it's slipped through. And Tyson Sacco is onside. Low delivery across the box. And he couldn't set his feet, the Pascoe Vale attacker. Real chance for this young Paco side. It was Connor Cometti making the late run from midfield into the box, but just slightly overran the cutback.
Paco are up for it, Josh. It's one of the great benefits of playing a second team, really, having all the youngsters going. They know what a big opportunity this is, and you can see with the energy with which they're pressing, and when they win the ball back, they're springing forward. Everyone wants to get into the box and be that danger man in the penalty area.
Well, Connor Cometti is one of the more experienced players in this team, if you can say that. Given that he's been involved in the senior side for, well, all of 3 weeks. Made his debut in round 4 against Albion Rovers. He was on the bench against Brunswick Juventus over the weekend. Well done by Matthias Mullins to win that. Paco come forward again. Through ball in behind towards Daoud, who's got the better of Jankovic here and forces Bethoulis into a reflex save. The young striker knows he had a good glimpse at goal from the angle there.
A slightly awkward one for Bethoulis as well. Just not quite sure if it's on target or not, taking no chances, sticking the arm out. Yet again, for the second time in a handful of minutes, Paco threatening in and around the south penalty area.
The young Bucks growing in confidence here. Packed 6-yard box. Ball driven in. Bethoulis was nowhere, and it's off the line. How did Paco not score? Extraordinary. South Melbourne living on the edge. Daoud with the overhead kick is blocked. Follow-up shot comes in, and Pascoe Vale take the lead. Would you believe it? Tyson Sacco. The Pascoe Vale under-23s lead at Lakeside.
Well, Josh, we couldn't believe that the ball didn't go in a couple of seconds before. It looked like a sure thing, and Paco got a second crack, and what a hit it was from Tyson Sacco. He absolutely rifled it, and the pace alone is what beat Jonathan Bethoulis. A wonderful goal, and an excellent goal for the spectacle of this match, because all of a sudden South Melbourne are under a mountain of pressure, and they've got to come out and find some kind of response sooner rather than later.
You looked at the team sheet when it came out and thought Pascoe Vale have no interest in winning this game. Well, someone forgot to tell the players they selected. Absolutely stunning turn of events here. And just when you thought this season couldn't get any worse for South Melbourne Hellas, the ignominy of a potential elimination to the reserve side of a VPL 2 team. Surely, not even this season South Melbourne could lose this game.
It's not as if they weren't warned either, Josh. We saw a couple of looks in the last 5 minutes. Paco have looked like the more threatening team in this game in the opening almost 20 minutes that we've played. South didn't wake up. They had their opportunities. They were given a brief reprieve, but then they didn't up their game, and Paco have made them pay.
credit to Sacco, who's looked the most likely for Pascoe Vale. A great run down the right, and that cut back to Cometti that didn't quite connect. But boy, did he connect with that half volley. Smashed into the back of the net. And this could be a famous night for a club that's been on its knees this season. South Melbourne looking to respond immediately. D'Urso's brought down. A poor challenge. And there may be further action taken. Just a warning, it looks like, for Lewis Cool. Shooting chance here for Spiteri. Does he put it in the box? Or does he go for glory? It's towards the far post and it misses everything. Neither here nor there. Really disappointing.
Not an ideal time for it to happen. It's the kind of free kick that we see often, to be fair, Josh, but yeah, at this moment when things could hardly have gone worse for South in the opening 20 minutes, that will feel like a real missed opportunity, and each of those moments that Paco get will give them more and more confidence and more belief in this game. They've already got the lead, and they've kept South at bay in the opening 21 minutes. Question, Josh, if you're Paco, do you take relegation if it means winning the Dockerty Cup?
If it means winning the cup?
it's a long way to go, just hypothetically.
I mean, many were asking similar questions about Tottenham Hotspur in the past week. South Melbourne's favourite son, of course. Cometti. Still Cometti, who sprung back up to his feet somehow. Sacco. A little layoff from Hahn was short.
And I know, Josh, that you, of course, follow the South Melbourne team quite closely and their week-to-week showings. We've had a few weeks now since Esteban Quintas left the club, and some opportunities for fresh faces and a renewed voice in the dressing room. What have you seen in terms of change and difference in the last month, and is it something that gives you any reason for optimism, or do you think that the game against the Knights was more an anomaly?
Well, what gives you pause is that South Melbourne have cycled through every team in NPL Victoria before winning another game. The only teams they've beaten this season was Pascoe Vale on the first day of the season and the Melbourne Knights twice. That's clearly where their level's at the moment. However,
maybe not Pascoe Vale, but I know what you mean.
True. However, I have seen some green shoots in the way that South Melbourne have been approaching games, the way they've been generating chances, building up from the back. They seem like a more well-rounded team. Is it translating to results yet? Certainly not. Performance against Port Melbourne a couple of weeks ago was an absolute shocker. So they're still in the thick of things relegation-wise, but I do feel that the win over the weekend, in spite of what we've just seen tonight, should spur them on. And you'd expect that South Melbourne will have to roll the dice in the transfer window as well, which is the big X factor. It comes in not until round 20, so essentially trying to sign ringers for the last 7 games of the season. Right, South Melbourne have already made a tactical change. We mentioned it earlier. And Glazy up top. So what worked on the weekend, Sinisha Kahadzic is going back to the well. Bernarda dribbling past two, but the third challenge sees the ball cleared out of danger.
You can understand why you would think that tactic of throwing Glazo forward would work particularly well against such a young and inexperienced team. Of course, physically the smaller bodies, but just providing that presence to make Pascoe uncomfortable.
Another South Melbourne corner. Talk about situations where South Melbourne can use their physical advantage. Well, set pieces have historically been, at least in recent history, South Melbourne's strength. Mel's great delivery. Pascoe Vale had to scramble there to get that header clear. Take two for George Mel's. Another in-swinger from the left. Wiseman underneath it. Did he get a palm to it? Referee says goal kick. And a shaky moment for Pascoe Vale's second choice keeper. At least he has been recently. Jake Angelovski was the starter on the weekend against Brunswick Juve. A couple of nervy moments under the high ball there.
Fair to say that the defensive side of Pascoe's game has been far from their strength the last couple of months. Not many things have been, but they've been extraordinarily leaky over the last, as I say, 6 to 8 weeks in their games. Averaging about 3 goals per game conceded in BPL2 over the last 6 to 8 weeks. So it's an area of vulnerability.
Bernarda's cross. Durso. Could you bring me up the under-23s defensive record, Oscar? That stat may be of more relevance tonight. Mel's. Dovison turning and shooting. Oh, he wasn't far away. A snapshot from out of nowhere from Campbell Dovison. And it just drifts wide of the top left corner. Yet to score for South Melbourne after joining from Western United in the off-season. The former Joey.
I'll tell you what, Josh, you asked the question, and if you take a look at the Pascoe under-23s team the last couple of weeks, there's plenty of resemblance with the team we're seeing out on the pitch tonight. And they've kept 2 clean sheets in the last 2 weeks, so feeling high, filled with plenty of confidence coming into tonight.
Maybe we misread the intentions of the coaching staff. Maybe these are all selection-based decisions rather than trying to save the first-team players. I don't think so, but certainly it's fit the bill so far. Injury issue here. Oh, goodness me. The last thing that South Melbourne need is another of their star players walking wounded. And they're calling for the sub. Thankfully, that's not Noel Bernarda who's down. He's over taking some instructions from Kahadzic on the bench.
I wonder if it might be Luca Durso, Josh.
You might be right. Have to wait on the other side of the lakeside running track here, so we'll have to wait and see till we get a clear view of the jersey. That does not look good. leaving the field under his own steam.
As you say, a real shame, and we'll certainly hope that it isn't something that will keep the player out for any kind of extended period. It seemed a fairly innocuous incident, and in the context of tonight, things certainly not going to plan for South Melbourne.
It is Luca D'Urso who is replaced.
Substitution for South Melbourne FC, coming off number 13, Luca D'Urso, coming on number 11, Robert Harding.
For the attack. Bernardo hooks it over the top. Charlie Leach cutting infield and then past a second challenge. Leach to the byline. And he kicks the side netting in frustration. Well covered by Mateus Mullins there. Another corner for South Melbourne. This one's taken short. Spiteri can't beat the first man.
And the consolation for South, of course, having Robbie Harding coming on, who of course poses a serious goal threat. So the hand's been forced, but maybe they'll turn it into some kind of advantage.
Well, Harding certainly has the pace. Does he have the end product that South Melbourne need tonight? That's the question. Round of applause for Luca D'Urso as he's helped down the tunnel. That one looks worrying. Leach. Through ball looking for Inglese. Wiseman out quick enough to pounce on it. Sacco. Cometti. Went to the deck, no whistle. Dovison. Has support on the right. It's floated to the back stick where Bernardo waits and the ball never arrives. Headed behind by Josh Caruana.
There has been a noticeable uptick in the intensity that South are playing with in the last 5 or 10 minutes. You can see it when they charge forward in numbers.
Mells. In swinger. Wiseman was nervous underneath it, but sees it behind for a goal kick.
But a night like tonight, Josh, of course, you're not going to fix the systemic issues with the club and with the football, and I think that at least a half of high-intensity football from this quality or calibre of player from South Melbourne should be enough to get the job done. So maybe some signs to believe that South Melbourne can get back into this game if you're of that persuasion.
South Melbourne quickly announced their member forum after the win against Melbourne Knights. That's taking place tomorrow night, I believe.
Okay, when the sun's shining, Josh.
Goodness me, how the mood will turn if they're eliminated tonight. Dovison. Wiseman away. Halfpenny wins the header. Spiteri. Ball ricochets through for Leach, who unleashes. Great challenge from Lewis Cool. And then another one from Sacco. And Paco away, 4v3 here. Cometti has decisions to make. Still Cometti tries to take it past Jankovic. Helps it on through. The shot from the angle is clipped over the bar by the fingertips of Jonathan Bethoulis.
Not the first time tonight we've seen the goalkeeper looking slightly nervy at his near post. Paco have gone for that top corner on a few occasions. Once again, Bethoulis doing just enough to get it behind for the corner. But that threat on the counter, it remains, and it remains severe.
It's in dangerously. Bethoulis off the line and then headed away by Jankovic. Pascoe Vale were nearly in for a second. South Melbourne have come close off set pieces, but they haven't defended their own at the other end with any conviction.
I'll tell you what, Josh, that moment just there with Tyson Sacco making that long backtracking run, he's been one of the main threats on the counter now, getting all the way back and winning back possession to end the counter-attack. There's no doubt of the spirit and the optimism that's currently in this Pascoe team. And on a night like tonight, when nothing's coming easy for either team, maybe that's the kind of thing that will make the difference and get one of these teams over the line.
Just got a spring in their step tonight, Pascoe Vale. They don't seem to be burdened by expectation the way South Melbourne seem to be. Maybe that's me projecting onto the game, but there seems to be a nervousness and a weight. Everything that South Melbourne do. Yankovic. Spiteri. Bernarda. Floated in. And kept in by Harding. Turned behind by Lewis Cool. Another corner for Pascoe Vale to defend. Spiteri. Left-footed delivery onto the edge of the 6-yard box. Shout for a Pascoe Vale free kick. Marko Yankovic less than impressed with the appeal. It's Cataruccio that went down, I think. 3 in the 6-yard box for South. Mells. Yankovic is the target again. Mells with a second chance to deliver off the left foot, but it was an awkward angle. And that's harmlessly behind.
Yeah, that incident for the corner beforehand, Charlie Leach with a couple of hands in the back of his opponent. Maybe went to ground a little bit easy, hence Marko Yankovic's reaction. They don't look totally impotent from those corners, South Melbourne, do they? They are getting players right in and around the goal, making clean contact with the ball. Just up to yet haven't really been able to test the goalkeeper enough, let alone find the back of the net.
Wiseman. Awkward clearance and it drops straight to Charlie Leach. Yankovic. Looks up to spot Morgan Evans on the far side. Evans. Sliding it down the line for Harding to cross. Bernarda was waiting. And tonight's captain, Lucas Sesto, does the business at the back again for Pascoe. You can see the Pascoe Vale bench were less than impressed with the decision to clear the ball there. They thought they had an opportunity to counter-attack. Inglese. Pass doesn't stick. It's when you're a holding midfielder or a destroyer playing up front, then maybe the nuances of the back-to-goal link-up play have got to take some time to arrive. Mells. Back by Evans to Bethoulis. Sacco, the goal scorer. Caruana loses out to Leach. Bernarda takes a trampoline touch back into midfield. Pass around the corner from Hahn was off the mark. Jankovic splits the Pascoe midfield with one pass. Here comes Dovison. Now Harding. Dovison gets the return ball, but it's too predictable. Lewis Cool gets a huge roar from the Pascoe bench as he slides in to clear. And right now, every defensive action is reason to celebrate for Pascoe Vale.
South aren't making their lives hard enough at the moment. It was a rare moment of a forward showing for the ball just there with Dovison. Jankovic, as you said, with that piercing pass, but just seeing a lot of passing around the back and the sides for South Melbourne. You don't expect them to pick apart teams playing right through them on each occasion, but at the moment, they're not making life hard enough for their young opponents.
And now Daoud has picked that one off. Sacco for Cometti. Now Daoud takes it wide and he slids straight through Jankovic. That's dangerous. Unintentional, but still went in with 2 feet, Daoud. And he's punished by a yellow card, the first booking of the contest.
Yeah, pretty straightforward call for our referee to make there. Just a little overzealous with the defensive challenge. I mean, we know things aren't going great for South at the moment and haven't all season. And in these games where you've got such a, at least on paper, imbalance of quality of personnel, fitness, technical ability, resourcing, you can often just lean in on that extra energy and willpower to get yourself over the line.
Inglese finding Bernarda, he's free! Oh, Noel Bernarda has missed! The goal gaping. And South Melbourne's most reliable route to goal fails at the final hurdle.
And you speak about that extra layer of quality that South Melbourne have, none representing that better than Noel Bernarda. You just about put your house on finishing that opportunity. Really sums up how things are going for South just at the minute. But a positive sign that that's as good a look as they've had at goal all half now, Bernarda. They won't want to give him as good a look as that again, Pascoe Vale, because surely if he gets another crack, he'll take his chance.
I said earlier, Oscar, he looked closer to fully fit. I might be retracting that statement now. Give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's still recovering from his injury woes. Play with his goal record deserves the benefit of the doubt in that regard. 12 league goals in 2024 for South Melbourne. Often in big games as well. They have been a shadow of the same team without him. Several of the other key contributors. Of course, no Lopez between the sticks tonight. No Jake Marshall, no Brennan. Biggest absent. Ooh, we'll stay with players. Daoud robs Halfpenny. Daoud goes from range. And you can understand Tyson Sacco's frustrations. He was waiting for the ball into the middle. A careless giveaway. It's panic stations at the back again for South. Could be a chance at the other end. Bernarda. Can't get past the captain, Lucas Sesto.
I mean, how good of a chance was that? As you said, Sacco had his arms outstretched, frustrated that the pass wasn't played. It was an awkward one to thread the needle through a couple of South defenders, but it had to be the ball that was made. A big escape for South Melbourne.
Leach skipping past the challenge of Cataruccio. Can't pick out his teammate on the far side. A couple of shouts of wake up. I'm not sure if they were from the bench or from the stands.
We're a couple minutes away now from half-time, Josh, and whether or not Pascoe are able to get to the break with their lead intact. You mentioned at the beginning of the game the production line that Pascoe Vale have historically had and continue to have, and it's been a glowing reflection of that youth program out at Pascoe Vale, the way that they've been able to put out this under-23s 11 and take on, albeit a struggling South Melbourne, but really go toe-to-toe with them, and at the moment they're coming out on top.
Bravely in by Sacco. The chest of Harding. Inglese. Oh, again, fingers pointed. breaks down. And Glaze trying to force through a pass that wasn't really there. Decision-making's been poor for South Melbourne tonight.
Fascinated to see how South come out in the second half. I mean, if the coach can't get a rocket up his team after this first half showing, I don't know if they ever will be able to. But South need to come out looking like a totally different team because they've been outclassed.
Leach. He's been busy tonight, Charlie Leach. He's been able to beat the first defender most of the time. Pascoe Vale playing this back five, always have a covering central defender to come across and snuff him out. Melts. To the danger zone again, brave defending from Paco. And Spiteri spoons it over the crossbar. Two minutes up on the fourth officials board to end this first half.
The fourth official has indicated there will be a minimum of 2 minutes of added time.
Concerned. I need to harp on about Pascoe Vale's team selection, but not a single player who started the weekend's VPL 2 match has started tonight. Bernarda. Leach. Bernarda again. The ball's gone out and it won't count. Pascoe Vale clear their lines anyway.
Just the pass back to Noel Bernarda. The striker still caught offside. The combination with Leach. You mentioned Charlie Leach. He's probably been the most likely South attacker in this first half. He's provided a little bit of zip down the wing. The final touch and the quality of finish in the final third hasn't been there from anyone in the South shirt as of yet.
Evans back to his goalkeeper. Spiteri. Up to Bernarda. Bernarda threads it through. Wiseman playing sweeper keeper and almost got himself into trouble. Glaze couldn't quite take it round him. Scrambling white shirts back. And Kalen Geenan felt he was held. The referee agreed. Should be enough to see Paco through to the break. Their slender lead intact.
Just a bit of a heart and mouth moment there for Jacob Wiseman and Paco. He hasn't looked totally comfortable throughout the first half, but his defence have done a really excellent job at covering him.
And they don't even have time to make
score at
that
Lakeside Stadium. It is South Melbourne nil, Pascoe Vale 1.
Close. South Melbourne, who've named a relatively strong side, 5 starters from the weekend and several from the bench involved in this lineup. Pascoe Vale nowhere near the same sorts of team selection. They've rested the entire starting 11 from the weekend's loss to Brunswick Juventus. And yet, the under-23s of Pascoe Vale lead at Lakeside. Incredible, Oscar.
It's an unbelievable story brewing, Josh, and it's hard to argue that Paco don't deserve it. They could have conceded a goal or two, but they also could have scored a couple of more. So credit to Pascoe Vale for the way that the youngsters have come out tonight and put out a really good account so far. But the onus is totally on South to come out with a totally different game plan in the second 45.
South Melbourne staring down the barrel of an embarrassing Dockerty Cup exit. Join us on the other side of this break. We'll see whether Sinisa Gohadzic's side can mount a comeback. Pascoe Vale lead at Lakeside by a goal to nil.
45 minutes down at Lakeside Stadium, and a serious upset is brewing. Pascoe Vale leads South Melbourne 1-0. A Pascoe Vale team that is more or less an under-23s 11, none of whom started Pascoe Vale's league game on the weekend. And it is they who lead a fairly strong South Melbourne lineup 1-0 at the break. South have given a few younger players a run, but on the whole, plenty of regular faces in the lineup, at least from the start tonight. And they've got plenty of work to do if they want to find themselves back into this game. A couple of changes for South at the break. Jordan Lampard and Sam Franku both being brought on into the game by Sinisha Kahadzic. But fair to say, Josh Parrish, that South Melbourne will need a much improved performance if they are to get themselves back into this game.
And they've already used one of their substitutions enforced in the first half after Luca Durso went down with injury and was stretchered down the tunnel. So this is turning into an expensive and potentially embarrassing evening for the South Melbourne Football Club. Zach Spiteri and Campbell Dovison have been withdrawn. Two players you mentioned, Lampard and Franku, who both started against the Knights, into the mix. And Oscar, from what we're hearing, reverberating from inside the South Melbourne change rooms, Sinisha Kahadzic was not best pleased with their performance in the first half.
You could say that, Josh, and it may have been a potentially extended cut of the displeased coach halftime conversation. Sinisha doing what he can to try get his team cajoled back up to the level that they need to come up against this Pascoe Vale team who've come up to play, and they've turned up.
It's usually our philosophy that what's said inside the room stays inside the rooms, but once it reaches a certain volume, well, I think it's public domain.
See Marko Jankovic on the ball, carrying the ball for South Melbourne as he looks long and direct out to the left-hand side, hoping for Noel Bernarda to find his way onto it, not to be. To see Lucas Inglese, who's maintained his position as the number 9, really, the tall target up top to provide maybe an outlet if South are forced to send the ball long. Here is Inglese getting involved.
Doesn't look like a change in shape from South Melbourne as far as we can tell. Still roughly a diamond. Inglese started the game in central defence, but it was quickly over to plan B after the concession of that goal.
Sent that ball high into the sky from Jonathan Pathoulis. Wasn't his best first attempt at a clearance, much cleaner contact second time round.
You can see Lampard stepping quite narrow into midfield. The ball's on the opposite side at times, inverting from fullback. Otherwise a rough diamond, no pun intended, South Melbourne in the 4-4-2. Looks like George Mells is going to play at the tip of that diamond behind Bernarda and Inglese, with Sam Franku occupying that screening role in front of the back four.
That ball unable to be kept in play. Fair to say we've seen a slightly more direct approach from South in the opening few minutes. Maybe spending a little bit too much time not threatening their young opposition in that first half for Sinisha Kahadzic's liking. Trying to apply that early pressure, but as was the case so often in the first 45, unable to locate the finishing touch when they needed it, particularly in that final third. That being said, it wasn't as if South didn't have looks at goal. They may get their first of the half here. Lucas Inglese, they're not able to take control of the ball. And if you're Pascoe Vale, Josh, you assume it's rinse and repeat. Same idea going into the second half as the first. Sit back, absorb the pressure, and pose a real threat on the counter-attack. Ball inside for Inglese. out to the right, where there's a clever touch made, and the shot comes in as well. It was a little bit dangerous for Jacob Wiseman, the goalkeeper grateful as he clasps the ball in his arms. A little bit of a look in for Robbie Harding, that enforced first half substitute that Josh mentioned. Certainly not lacking for weight of numbers in the opposition half in this second 45 so far, South Melbourne.
It's worth mentioning they should be level, if not for a missed sitter from Noel Bernarda late in the piece there. And if he was fully fit and firing, you'd imagine he'd stick the ball in the back of the net 9.5 times out of 10.
Certainly the best look on goal that South were able to generate in that first 45.
But equally, Pascoe could have had a second, again from the set piece. Jonathan Pathoulis has looked extremely shaky when the ball has been swung in towards him from those corners on the left-hand side. It's only desperate defending that cleared the ball off the line twice, and of course, in that same phase of play the first time around, Pascoe Vale put the ball back in the box, and Tyson Sacco slammed it in. It's a break on now for Sacco. Can't get there ahead of Lampard. The Committee pass was just short. Pascoe Vale press back and win it high. Daoud was waiting in the middle, away by halfpenny. Lampard gets a toe on the ball. South Melbourne break here. Franku battling forward on the deck. And he holds his head after a stray arm. But only after giving away the free kick. At least at first glance, didn't look like there was any intent from the Pascoe Vale player to catch him there.
You can see him still just holding the head, Sam Franku. It's not one that would tickle, particularly on a night like tonight, the flailing arm. It does look as if he'll be good to continue and help out with the defence of this set piece.
Well, an obvious shirt pull there by Lewis Cool. He's been on the BPL2 team sheet for Pascoe Vale 9 times this season. So at least peripherally involved in the first team picture. The side rooted to the bottom of the table in VPL 2. More than can be said for most of these players. That's the story of the game. Pascoe Vale rolling out the reserves, and still they lead at Lakeside. Bernardo looking to change that. Bustles his way past the first tackle. Cataruccio in strongly with the second. A huge roar from the Pascoe bench goes up every time these young players put in another last gasp defensive challenge. Corner will be taken from the right-hand side this time by Jordan Lampard, that half-time substitute. Can he offer some quality from the dead ball? To the back stick, Jankovic was waiting. Too many white shirts in the way. Anywhere will do for Pascoe Vale. Pathoulis. Hurried clearance. Ball ricochets its way to Mells. Looks for the killer pass to Harding. Inglese wins it back for South Melbourne. The ball won't quite run through for Bernarda. Lampard still has lingered on that right-hand side. Mells looking for the killer ball. The flag is up and it won't count. Wiseman came up with a great save regardless. The diving header, Lucas Inglese, would have been chalked off.
I mean, you feel for the goalkeeper in that instance that he doesn't get the save stat for it, because it was a spectacular goalkeeping effort to send it just wide of the post. That was really as good a couple-minute attacking spell as we've seen from South Melbourne in this whole game. Creating that initial chance from the set piece and then the subsequent phases, throwing bodies forward and trying to capitalise on a slightly unsettled defence. Credit to Pascoe Vale, though. How often have we seen an individual step up and make a really important defensive intervention just when you feel like South are starting to build some momentum?
Pascoe Vale FC coming off.
It's going to be a change made for Pascoe.
Number
Mohammed
17
Habib.
and coming on, number 14, Mohammed Habib.
It's going to come on for Josh Cataruccio, their first change of the night. And he'll offer some energy and some intensity in the centre of the park. I think he qualifies as a senior player, even though he was on the bench on the weekend. He's been in the first team picture at Pascoe for quite a few years now. Mels clips it over the top. Oh, danger here for Pascoe, and it whistles just wide. Lucas Inglese with another good look at goal. He thought he was being held. Almost a very tidy finish there, Oscar.
It's the kind of situation that you'd, of course, love your seasoned attacking player to be in, that requires the clever, deft touch, just lofting it over the goalkeeper. And as you say, Lucas Inglese did most of that work. It was a seriously good attempt for any player in that position, let alone a makeshift number 9. This is the first time in this game that you get the sense that the Pascoe defence is under a serious spell of sustained pressure.
Lee Menopoulos is up off the South Melbourne bench, not happy with that decision. It will be a Pascoe throw. There was a fair bit of physicality going on there. Maybe a more seasoned striker would go down and look for the penalty instead. Bernarda takes it wide, cross took a little deflection. Franku. Referee says, get back to your feet. Well, I must admit, I thought Sam Franku was caught there, Oscar.
Yeah, and it's not going to do any favours to the increasingly agitated South Melbourne players, because each of these phases of play that pass by were either Pascoe defend another South attack or they spring forward on a counter. The pressure just mounts more and more, and the nerves that will come to the fore for South Melbourne as they try to avoid what would be really just about the ultimate embarrassment for this season. For Pascoe Vale, they're about 35 minutes away from achieving it. Strong challenge coming in from Mels. Unable, though, to win back possession for South. Ball through will be comfortably dealt with by Halfpenny. Now Franku carries it forward, very nearly turning it over to the feet of Sacco, the scorer of the goal which separates the teams at the moment. The first serious touch from Mohammed Habib, and there was a crunching challenge coming in from behind. And you heard the calls from the Pascoe bench. And they feel that there should be some consequence for that tackle.
Yeah, surprised to see Noel Bernarda stay out of the book there. It was from behind. Thankfully, the physio is right there to tend to Mohammed Habib, who went crashing into his own bench.
Not exactly the most welcoming introduction to the game for Habib, who thankfully is back on his feet and looks to jog off any soreness. Of course, more seconds off the clock for Pascoe Vale and a chance to send another ball into the mixer. Ball lofted inside, always closest to it was Pethulis. And he wastes no time sending the ball up in the opposite direction. Keeping it in play was Mels. Set a task for Inglese, who was never likely to get there first. South attack continues more centrally. It's a sneaky ball once again. Inglese the target. Maybe a move with throwing Lucas Inglese up top where you're using him as a target man kind of player, but more often than not in the second half, it's been ball to feet that he's been asked to deal with. This is Mells. Out towards Harding. Harding plays it across goal.
Goodness me. Speechless, Oscar. Absolutely speechless. Lucas Inglese was not ruled offside there. He's missed an open goal.
Everyone stood still waiting for the flag to come. South Melbourne have somehow passed up another opportunity. And it's moments like that, Josh, that make you seriously concerned from a South Melbourne perspective if they're ever going to find a way through tonight.
I mean, time stood still, Oscar. The flag does come from Daoud. Infuriates the Pascoe bench.
This game just threatening to boil over a little bit. The tension is high in the air.
I mean, even for a makeshift striker, that's an inexplicable miss for Inglese. You have to play the whistle. You can't assume that you're offside. The goal was gaping. Wiseman was offering zero resistance. How does Lucas Inglese miss that?
This is Franco for South. Looks cross field. Lampard. Ball played inside. Referee not interested. And now another chance perhaps for Pascoe Vale to spring forward. Sacco tries to turn a couple of South players. Not for the first time. The shout from either the South bench or stands comes for players to wake up. They've got a chance here down the left-hand side with Noel Bernarda. Cross is played first time. Harding was the nearest to it. There's a shot from range thundered in by Mells. He's gone to ground after the incident as well. So further concern on the injury front for South Melbourne. George Mells remains on the ground. Habib will play it out into touch. Just when it looked like this night couldn't get any worse for South Melbourne, Josh. They look like they're facing down yet another injury concern.
Well, George Mells is only just back into the team. Not part of the squad to face Knights on Friday night. He's been deemed fit to start this evening. Might just be a spot of cramp, at least that's what they'll be hoping. Players who've missed a little bit of football are more susceptible. Just felt after the shot was blocked, he maybe tweaked something.
But it's a break in play at a good time for Pascoe Vale, you'd think. You see the players in their huddle looking to regroup. They put in such a fantastic effort in this first 63 minutes of this game. Their lead is still intact, but it's of course in the last half hour that fatigue can set in and you get nervous, of course. Mistakes more likely to happen, so chance to regroup. They may be carried through the remainder of this game by pure adrenaline if necessary. Pascoe Vale, because they're edging closer to achieving something that certainly none of these players will forget for the remainder of their careers if they can get it done. Full touchdown by Inglese, but the offside flag does come.
Oscar, can I interest you in some scores from around the grounds?
Let's hit us with them, Josh.
Avondale up 2-0 against Manningham United. Let's hold for play for a moment here. It's going to run out on Pascoe Vale. Dandenong Thunder up 2-0 at home to Whittlesea United. But here's where it gets interesting. Dandenong City 0, Brunswick City 2. Potential cup set on the hands. On the cards, rather, at Frank Holohan. And at North Sunshine Eagles, not sure if you'd call it a cup set necessarily, but playing a VPL2 side They are down 3-1 at home. They were up 1-0, but Nunawading have hit back with 3 quick-fire goals to end the half.
I'll tell you what, Josh, the good news for any team potentially subject to a cup set tonight is that if this result holds, no one will really be paying that much attention to it.
Certainly the headline item if Pascoe Vale get this done with the squad that they've picked. Hahn runs it out of play. And South Melbourne will go to their bench again. Their 4th change. Noel Bernarda is coming off. Well, he hasn't offered too much. Just the mere presence of Noel Bernarda, you would think, would give South Melbourne fans hope.
Ethan O'Sullivan.
Instead, Sinisa Kohadzic has decided to withdraw his star attraction, and on comes Ethan O'Sullivan. Another name elevated from the under-23 side.
I mean, the issue for Souths, though, is that George Mells looks to have gone down again with cramp, and he's limping off the pitch nearer to the Pascoe Vale goal once again, so he hasn't been able to shake off that earlier concern.
I think they're going to make a double change.
And coming off number 10, George Mells. Coming on number 40, Cooper Head.
As I'm sure you've seen or heard over the PA system, Cooper Head will come in for George Mells. Those are not like-for-like changes, by the way. Ethan O'Sullivan is a right-back, at least as deployed in the South Melbourne under-23s, as the rain starts to come down here at Lakeside. And Cooper Head is a central defender. He has been involved in the first-team picture, debuted against Oakley. After impressing in the under-23s, had a spell in Spain prior to that. But they'll be forced into a reshuffle here with O'Sullivan providing more advanced width on the right-hand side. Head into the middle of defence, halfpenny into holding midfield, and Franco will have to push further forward.
Bring young defenders in a game where you're chasing a deficit. You can get rid of Esteban Quintas, but maybe you can't get rid of his ideas.
His imprint still looms large. Lucas Inglese up top seems like a Quintas manoeuvre to me. Dare we say it? Although the approach from South Melbourne hasn't exactly been cookie cutter from that long era at the club. Does give Rob Harding the chance to go further forward, though, and here's a striker by trade, or at least was during his time at Manningham. It's predominantly been used out wide at South Melbourne, but 2 up top, big man, little man, power and speed. It's almost a Harry Redknapp striker combination. And Paco are going to make a change of their own. Connor Cometti is withdrawn.
Substitution
On
for
comes
Pascoe Vale, coming
Felix
off number 8,
Ruiz.
Connor Cometti. Coming on number 11, Felix Ruiz.
Another youngster who's debuted in the Cup earlier this season against Albion Rovers a couple of weeks back. Of course, playing senior football at Lakeside's a bit different than facing your state league upstarts.
We just saw Honey Atash giving the big come on to the Paco bench and supporters, looking for their energy to carry this team through the final 20-odd minutes that they've got to see out in this game. And every moment of individual quality that we see from Paco will be met with a rousing cheer from this point on, you'd think.
Tate was waiting in the middle. Cross never found him. South Melbourne have played all their cards. They've made all 5 substitutions. And it's up to the players on the park to get the job done. So Nisha Kahadzic can influence the game no further. Sesto hacks it away. Halfpenny's won the header. Franku shout for handball against him. Play on signal by the referee. Lampards to the back post, and then Harding nods it wide. He was wide open. Ethan O'Sullivan's ball back into the mix-up. It was pinpoint. But the number 11 couldn't turn his effort goalwards. That's 3 golden chances tonight for South Melbourne. And they haven't hit the target with one of them.
Well, it really... You mentioned the big little striking combo that South are going with for the remainder of this game, and you felt like each chance has fallen to the wrong player. The ball so often at the feet of Inglesi having to do the deft touches, and then Robbie Harding's the one with the headed chance. Just nothing quite going to plan for South Melbourne. And with the committee on the park, Josh, or on the team sheet, you did miss an opportunity there to describe O'Sullivan's cross as centimetre perfect, but I'll let you off for it.
Admirable restraint from you tonight, Oscar. Leach's header. Franku. Franku again. Habib's headed down. Aniatesh away. And Pathoulis has no choice but to thump it as far as he can, which is short of the halfway line. Sacco lost out. Leach is down, cramping. South Melbourne have no more subs. They're going to have to soldier on. The limping Charlie Leach in midfield.
Really is turning into a game that represents South's entire season really in microcosm. Conceding that goal, struggling to break down low blocks or even mid blocks. The Pascoe Vale have put before South Melbourne, wounded soldiers going down, having to struggle on and turn to the youth. And at the moment, the result not going their way either.
Played their way through in pretty tidy fashion here, though, and now Lampard! And no contact in the middle from O'Sullivan. Except on the goalkeeper, Jacob Wiseman, who's been left worse for wear after that. South Melbourne finally play their way through the Pascoe Vale lines. That's the way Sinisa Kohadzic is trying to coach this team to play, but they can't convert.
Credit to the goalkeeper as well, putting his body out there even if the ball ended up being a few metres away. As you say, South Melbourne, the quality of chance they've created has been better in this second half. When they've been so few and far between for most of these players throughout the season, you can understand a little bit of rustiness around goal and finishing off chances in the final third, and right now that is hurting South deeply.
And we hope Jacob Wiseman's okay, but it does give Pascoe Vale another opportunity to just slow the game down. Take a few seconds off the clock, even if they result in extra stoppage time. It's breaking South Melbourne's rhythm. Hellas don't have a single player on the halfway line at the moment. They can't afford to take a backward step here. Franku. O'Sullivan. Anywhere will do. Franku lets the ball run and spins away from his marker. Threading it through towards O'Sullivan. Lewis Cool was in two minds, but decided to clear the danger. And O'Sullivan will prepare to go long. Struck goalwards by Morgan Evans. White shirt in the way. It's blocked by Sacco, I think. Now Inglese from the angle. And the flag is up against him. Jacob Wiseman came a long way from his goal there to smother the danger, but it wouldn't have counted regardless.
Pascoe Vale have a game against Geelong Soccer Club on the weekend, Josh, and if you're any of the players on the pitch at the moment, you're feeling hard done by if you're maybe not given a crack.
Well, certainly, Pascoe Vale have shown more spirit tonight than they have for most of their VPL2 campaigns, so plenty to think about for the Paco coaching staff. Of course, you'd imagine they call up most of their big guns for that one. Players with a lot of experience, Chris Dibb, who's played top flight NPL, Benji Levitikos and Karl Baricevic, who spent so many years with the Preston Lions through their ascent in the Victorian football ranks.
And you said I showed restraint earlier, Josh. I'm surprised it's taken us 75 minutes for you to get Preston into the call.
Well, with the players not in the matchday squad, it's been tough for me to shoehorn them in, Oscar. Head. Flicked on, South with a big chance, and it's straight into the grateful palms of Jacob Wiseman. Again, South Melbourne blow their chance to equalise. Had plenty of them in this second half. It was Rob Harding with another headed opportunity, and it's so tame. Franku. Back to his goalkeeper, Bethoulis. Harding. Away by Mateus Mullins. Jankovic might take it upon himself here. O'Sullivan. Ball's gone out. Again, ironic jeers from travelling Pascoe Vale supporters and some of the first team players, I think, who are in the stands tonight supporting the reserves. Might be looking more nervously over their shoulders than they anticipated after this performance, but good on the young guns of Paco. Yes, South Melbourne haven't finished their chances, but they've still shown plenty of spirit. The under-23 side of the bottom team in VPL 2. Sacco. Felix Ruiz getting involved. Ruiz with some tidy footwork, enabling Lewis Cool to clear, and Hahn Taish might keep this in. And now South Melbourne are a little exposed. What can Taish do here? Cutting in field, this way and that. And nutmegging his defender. Habib cuts it back, no final touch. And a second goal for Paco would surely see them through to the next round.
Well, Josh, we've given plenty of credit to the Paco team for how they've approached this game, and as you said, the spirit and the intensity that they've brought, but there's also been a lot of really impressive footballing qualities I think also need to be acknowledged. I mean, some of the counter-attacks that they've put together tonight have been really slick, but even more so the defensive work, the defensive discipline that the players have shown to maintain their shape. So many of them have had to receive it under intense amount of pressure, the ball that is, and they've found a way through. They've stepped out of the defensive line when necessary. They've made the right decisions under all sorts of pressure. Yes, they've gotten lucky with South failing to take their chances, but they deserve a whole lot of credit for the football that they've put out as well.
South Melbourne really in dire straits here. They need a goal and they need it quickly. Franku. O'Sullivan. In swinging to the back post. And then centred towards Franku, but Habib does enough to clear the danger.
I mean, just that passage of play, it's some of the quickest ball movement that we've seen all night from South, and it was in such stark contrast to so much of what they put out.
Well, no Max Mikkola, of course. He's still injured. Ethan O'Sullivan is going to have to do his best Mikkola impersonation here. Saw one long throw from him already. Mills it long, Inglese, Leach. Dangerous ball. Someone needs to turn this home. At Pascoe Vale. Stick white shirts in the way. Again, brave defending from the youngsters at the cost of a corner. Cooper Head was the man with the chance, but the space just closed off in front of him in a hurry. And he couldn't get the shot away in time. Lampard to the back stick. And it just dips in. South Melbourne level. Marko Jankovic with the looping header. And yet again, it is South Melbourne's number 4 who answers in their hour of need. The equaliser away to Bentley. The heroics in last year's Australia Cup run. And Marko Jankovic has stood tall for South Melbourne Hellas again.
Goal for South Melbourne FC.
Well, heartbreak for Pascoe Vale, Josh. They've defended valiantly all night. They were within 10 minutes of the end of the 90. But as you say, Marko Jankovic, a stalwart of this club and one of the real leaders who's had to deal with a lot of flack for everything that South have gone through this season. But that was a moment for him to stand up, and he took it with both hands. A scrappy finish, but it doesn't really matter for South Melbourne at this point. They needed a goal and they got it.
And now the card will come out. Lampard was taken down. Tackle in too wide an area to be considered for a red card, but certainly yellow fits the bill. And the South Melbourne supporters have found their voice at last. Josh Caruana into the book. Double change for Paco. Well, time seems to stand still as Marko Jankovic met that corner.
Substitution for Pascoe Vale coming off, number 99, Adam Daoud.
Certainly Jacob Wiseman was standing still, stranded.
It's not the first time tonight that
Number
we've seen
15,
it in that
Matthew
position
Fanena.
where you can't quite tell initially if it's on target or not, and it looked as if it might be yet another attempt that goes narrowly wide at the post, but it snuck just on the right side. And South Melbourne, they just needed one to get themselves back into this game, and it came just in the nick of time as well.
I feel like it's more psychological than anything. They just needed something to arrest that sinking feeling again. Will Pascoe Vale be able to make that second change? Hani Atesh is going to go off. Adam Daoud has been replaced as well. Sammy Ulasoy is into the mix, as well as Matthew Ferreira. South Melbourne free kick. Skims wide off Jankovic. He could have had a double.
Yeah, it's real danger time for Pascoe Vale at the moment. That was...
In fact, was it Inglese with the final touch there? Have to have a look at the replay.
But either way, it was as good as South have looked from a set piece for a little while, and just the psychological boon that comes from getting that goal and the increase in pressure for Pascoe Vale. It's a nervous team now. They need to get forward a couple of times to relieve the pressure on the back, as well as, of course, giving themselves a chance of stealing back into the lead.
My apologies, that was Lucas Inglese who nodded wide. Could have had a hat-trick tonight.
Even more.
Let's not be too hard. How many match balls does he need? Harding slips at the crucial moment.
Pascoe Vale will get a rare reprieve as they take this throw in. It's unsurprising that the counter-attacking moves have dried up a little bit in this second half as they sink deeper into their shape and absorb more and more desperate South thrusts forward. Right now, their position in the Dockerty Cup is hanging by a thread, really. South Melbourne throwing everything at this final 5 minutes, trying to avoid, of course, the extra time that we would have if scores did remain level at the end of the 90.
The last thing South Melbourne need is extra time. Having rolled the dice and had to play quite a few of their first choice players in this game.
Lampard to deliver. Unable to beat the first defender, who heads it well clear.
Of course, they're not playing again until Sunday here at Lakeside for the visit of Melbourne Victory.
This becomes a very big game for South Melbourne, or just considering their status this season. Sullivan again with the long throw. Out to Lampard, who has a ping from outside the box. That one a fairly comfortable take for Jacob Wiseman.
What do you make of that long throw run-up?
I wonder if it's a response to the running track being wet and you're not wanting to step onto it and risk a slip of some kind.
I thought he was kicking around the corner. Lance Franklin-esque.
Well done, Josh. Opportunity for South. O'Sullivan again the target. Wiseman quick off his line and collapses onto the ball. And he will be in no rush to get the play back underway.
I think you might be right, Oscar. Studs on a slippery running track don't make for a good mix.
But he's adjusted well. He's got a good curve going in with the run-up. Manages to keep his forward momentum going. Ball hoofed clear by Mullins. Doesn't get especially far. South again quick to win back possession. Lampard's pass, not quite on the same wavelength as his teammate, but South were able to recover. Get the sense that some tired legs in that Pascoe Vale midfield. But really across the pitch, it's been an almighty effort backing up from the weekend. And this South team, you get the sense for the first time tonight, are wearing them down at the moment. Glazer's pass out to the right-hand side. Couldn't quite pick out O'Sullivan. And Jankovic will once again send it forward. There's a clever touch there, which may open the door for South Melbourne. Cross comes in from Head. Cleared away by Pascoe Vale.
Feels like there's only one team winning from here, Oscar. I suspect the dam might have broken, but can Pascoe Vale cling on to force extra time and regroup? A few words of structure and encouragement from their coaching staff could change everything, as well as just a respite from this South Melbourne onslaught.
And the young legs, Josh, you wonder if there might be a 4th, 5th, 6th wind still to come for Pascoe Vale if they can scrape over the line to the end of the 90. You can see the desperation with which South are seeking to avoid that outcome. And they've got themselves a free kick as well.
Jordan Lampard just hauled down there. Probably an unnecessary foul to give away, but that's the cost of inexperience. Pascoe Vale have reaped the rewards of the fearlessness of youth tonight, but it does come with its drawbacks.
We're in the final minute of the 90. South Melbourne have dragged themselves back level through a Marko Jankovic header. Is now the time. They snatch the lead at the death. Ball sent inside, finds a teammate's header. Still the chance is alive, there's a thundered attempt. And somehow the ball remains out of the back of the net.
Well, some of those in the grandstand thought it was in. We don't have the advertising hoardings up at Lakeside Stadium tonight, so whenever the ball stops, it looks like it's hit the back of the net, when in fact it's just a bag that's behind the goal.
The fourth official has indicated there will be a minimum of 5 minutes of added time.
We hardly need to repeat that, but 5 minutes added on to end the 90. Every chance that South Melbourne can seal it from here. Can Pascoe Vale just cling on? They've shown so much spirit. Inglese. Half a chance for Ruiz to chase something. He's collected Marko Jankovic. And there's just no respite. These young Paco players. The cup set was on the cards until Marko Jankovic stepped up to the plate for South Melbourne with that late equaliser. Can they complete the turnaround in stoppage time? Jankovic for Lampard. Juggled and helped on. And Ethan O'Sullivan pulls back his opponent and gives away the free kick. Foul on Tyson Sacco. Lucas Sesto will call Wiseman forward to take this free kick and hopefully get his team further up the pitch and away from defending their own box. This has been the pattern in the last 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah, it is so important when you've been defending for such an extended period of time. Just to spend a little bit of time at the opposite end of the pitch. They haven't made the most of that opportunity, Pascoe Vale. So it's all hands on deck, and they'll just have to keep with the absolute commitment to the defence.
Inglese's flick. Gets ahead to it again, and Harding turns on the Jets, and he's brought down by Cool. Waved away by the referee. There was contact in both directions. And the official says 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. No, thank you. Meanwhile, Lewis Cool has come off worse for wear. You can see the ball boys out. At least some willing volunteer to dry off that ball with a towel and give Ethan O'Sullivan every chance of propelling this as far as he can. All hands on deck. Every Pascoe Vale player back to defend this. Now familiar curved run up and good distance on the throw as well. Mohamed Habib onto that ball, uncontested. Safety first from Morgan Evans. Pascoe Vale could come back the other way. Sesto was brought down after the fact, and the referee waits what seems like an eternity. But pulls it back, no advantage for the visitors.
But a great result for Pascoe Vale. They got the chance to play the ball through, wasn't quite able to get the weight of the ball right, but now they've got possession. They've got it around the halfway mark of the pitch. Soaking more seconds off the clock. Another ball sent up towards the South Melbourne goal.
Habib won't sit for him. Inglese And now Harding. And now South Melbourne have a bit of space to attack. Harding hits the deck. Advantage paid. Lampard wins it in stoppage time for South Melbourne. The semi-finalists from last season's competition have their blushes spared at the death. Jordan Lampard off the bench and onto the score sheet. And it's despair for these young Pascoe Vale players who've given South Melbourne more of a game than they ever could have imagined at the start of the night. It's been an almighty scare. But Sinisa Kohadzic's team do just enough to see themselves through to round 7.
Well, at the pointy end of the match, Josh, it's the extra bit of quality that South Melbourne possess, represented by Jordan Lampard. It was a wonderful finish from a tight angle. Difficult one for the goalkeeper to stop. You saw the Pascoe Vale players collapse to the ground in the aftermath of the goal. They'll be absolutely crushed by the way that this has panned out. But for South Melbourne, they needed the result more than anything, and they've got it too.
Jordan Lampard wins it with the last kick of the game.
Full time at Lakeside Stadium. The final score is South Melbourne 2.
And South Melbourne can exhale at long last.
It's a doubleheader this weekend here at Lakeside
It's been
Stadium.
an agonising second half.
Our women's team are in action at 2 p.m.
And the South Melbourne persuasion.
And our men's face
Missing
the
chance
victory.
after chance after chance to equalise.
Match information will be available on our social
Tyson
media channels.
Sacco set the cat amongst the pigeons in the first half by giving this Pascoe Vale under-23 team the lead. And not until Marko Jankovic's late header did South Melbourne look like progressing in this competition. It was a matter of regulation time or the slog of extra time. And Jordan Lampard has not only sealed their progress, but avoided 30 potentially costly extra minutes tonight, which would have really negatively impacted their bid to stay in NPL Victoria. Oscar Rutherford, what drama we've seen tonight. More than we bargained for when we saw the team sheets.
I think that's right, Josh. I think that coming into the tonight, not many expected an excellent spectacle, and you saw the team sheets and you just about ruled it out as a sure thing. This is going to be one-way traffic. No one would have anticipated the theatre that we've had on offer tonight. It's a fantastic game of football. South Melbourne come away with the result, which is the most important thing for them, but credit as well has to go to all those Pascoe Vale players who have nothing to be ashamed of for their performance tonight. For South Melbourne, the cup is still alive. They've still got something to hang on to this season. And with a couple of wins back-to-back, maybe, just maybe, even if the performances aren't there, they can start to generate a more positive mood around the club once again.
An almighty relief and a confidence boost for this embattled South Melbourne side. The night didn't look like it was panning out that way. Plenty of positives, as you say, Oscar, for Pascoe Vale to reflect on after picking such a young team and taking South Melbourne all the way. We'll sign off from Lakeside. The final score, South Melbourne 2, Pascoe Vale 1.